What I've been focusing on a lot lately is wrapping up and QCing a lot of my visual effects shots for this kind of large project. There's hundreds and hundreds of visual effects shots. Some of them I had started literally years ago, and I'm kind of going back now, and I've learned so much on this project in terms of visual effects, using techniques and kind of doing visual effects type of work that I had never personally done before. So the whole thing has been like this crazy learning process, and I'm now going back to these project files and to these visual effects shots that I had completed years ago, and I'm just QCing them, and I'm making sure that, you know, like some of them have grain to remove like banding and the blacks and stuff like that, and kind of like adding all these little techniques and just like making sure that like my renders were okay. So in this indie film vlog, I'm going to share with you some of those tips that I've been using through my visual effects journey on this large kind of feature film project where I've done 350, 400 visual effects shots. I kind of lost count after about 350, and I've since done like, you know, dozens. So like it's probably close to 400 now. I've like kind of learned all these mistakes just by doing it. So hopefully I can kind of give some tips and tricks on how to avoid some of these like very time costing mistakes that I've made through my visual effects journey. This is an obvious one, and it's something that I've been doing forever, and it's just backing up your work, especially if you have longer renders or these like very complicated project files and stuff. If it's taken you 10 12-hour sessions of rendering, like if you've been rendering like overnight for weeks and you're trying to get this stuff out of like Blender or a 3D application, or maybe it's just like a crazy complicated After Effects comp that you're rendering out or something, you really want to be backing up your frames and backing up your renders to an external drive. Now you should be doing this with everything, and you could check out the card up in the corner there, and I have a whole video on how I back up my work to make sure that I never lose it. But you want to like really keep this stuff in mind when you're rendering these like long render sessions, because if something takes you like 2 weeks to render and then you lose those files, you lose those frames, or you've just lost like weeks and weeks worth of rendering. So people always talk about like backing up your work, backing up your project files and like your assets and stuff like that, but no one really talks about like backing up your renders, especially if they're like very lengthy renders. That's not going to be something that you're just able to like open the application and just like start over again. It's going to cost you weeks, and if you have like a whole bunch of shots to render out, or like you have other work to do, then it's really taking time away from that and just like lengthening the process. So fortunately I haven't lost any long renders. I back up my work pretty like religiously, but just keep this in mind, because like eventually one day like you're gonna lose something, and like a 2 week long render is not going to be something you want to re-render if you're trying to like wrap up a project. Another super helpful thing that I've learned is you really want to version up either your project or your comps or like whatever it is you're working in before you try something new or before you do something stupid. Make sure to version up, and then you could experiment and you could play around with it. But like sometimes in trying new things, you end up breaking something that was just like working fine, and you wanted to see if you can make it any better, and maybe you can't, but you end up breaking it anyway. You really want to make sure that you've versioned up either your project file or your comp, or you have like another version, a clean version of that somewhere else before you try this like new experimental thing. If the thing fails, you could revert back. There's nothing worse than quickly trying something new and then either like auto save happens, or maybe like just out of habit, like you save over the good version, and now you maybe can't walk back to the work that was kind of like your base, or like the thing that was working. Maybe you're like out of undos or something like that. So like make sure that you version up before trying anything, and you have like a good clean version of the thing that was working. This goes for editing as well. Like you should be versioning up your timelines before like you start mucking around with stuff. You know, if you're gonna like add some effects on, or if you're gonna like try a new edit of something, don't even kind of copy those clips and drag them into a different part of your timeline. Like you should really be versioning up the whole thing. And then I version up my project files as well, because just in case something happens and I end up with like a corrupt project file, like I want to be able to go back. I want as many options as possible when something goes wrong, and something will eventually go wrong. I want as many options as possible to be able to go back and have these different versions to draw from, and be able to like grab something that is no longer working and like copy it in. Maybe just creatively you liked the way something looked better, and it's not even like a technical thing. You really want to make sure you have those like older versions to draw on. So guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully some of this stuff was helpful. Thanks for kind of joining me on this like visual effects journey. I feel so terrible. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time.